This is the story of a boy who was abandoned at birth, a boy adopted by humble parents, a young man who dropped out of college. And yet, that same man built the company that put computers in our homes and smartphones in our pockets. This is the real story of Steve Jobs, his struggles, his vision, his failures, and his victories. Steve Jobs was born on February 24, 1955 in San Francisco, California. His biological parents were two young students who were not married and could not take care of him, so they gave him up for adoption. Steve was adopted by Paul and Clara Jobs, a working-class couple who promised to give him a good life. Paul was a machinist. He fixed cars and built things in the garage. Clara worked as an accountant. From an early age, Steve was curious. He loved taking things apart to see how they worked. He learned from his father how to use tools and build electronics. But Steve was not an easy child. He questioned rules. He challenged teachers. Even as a boy, he refused to accept limits. Steve grew up in Silicon Valley, the place that would later become the heart of the technology world. At Homestead High School, he met a shy, brilliant boy named Steve Wozniak. They shared a passion for electronics and pranks. The two Steves became close friends. At 17, Steve Jobs enrolled at Reed College in Oregon, but he quickly realized it was too expensive. His adoptive parents were spending their life savings, so after just 6 months, he dropped out. But Steve didn't really quit learning. He stayed on campus, sleeping on friends' floors and attending the classes he enjoyed, like calligraphy, which later inspired the beautiful fonts in Apple computers. In 1976, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak built the first Apple computer in Jobs' parents' garage. They called it the Apple I. They sold it to hobbyists and small shops. Soon, they created the Apple II, which became one of the first successful personal computers. Apple Computer Inc. was born. Steve was only 21 years old. He believed technology should be simple and beautiful. He pushed everyone around him to do their best work, often with harsh words and impossible deadlines. By 1980, Apple went public. Steve Jobs was a millionaire many times over. But success didn't last forever. In 1983, Jobs brought in a professional CEO, John Sculley, to help run the company. At first it seemed like a good idea, but soon there was conflict. Steve was working on a new computer, the Macintosh, which he believed would change the world. But it was expensive and sales were slower than expected. In 1985, the board of directors sided with Sculley. Steve Jobs was pushed out of his own company. He was only 30 years old. It was the lowest point of his life. He felt lost and humiliated. But Steve Jobs did not give up. He started a new computer company called Next. At the same time, he bought a small animation studio from George Lucas. That studio became Pixar. Pixar created the first fully computer-animated film, Toy Story, which was a massive success. Meanwhile, Next computers were too expensive for the mass market, but their technology was powerful. In 1996, Apple was struggling. The company was near bankruptcy. They decided to buy Next, and with it, they brought Steve Jobs back. In 1997, he became CEO again. He simplified Apple's products, cut costs, and focused the team on innovation. The result? The iMac, the iPod, the iPhone, the iPad. These products did not just save Apple. They changed how people communicate, work, and live. In 2007, Steve Jobs walked onto the stage in his black turtleneck and jeans. He held up a small device. "This," he said, "is an iPhone." The audience cheered. The iPhone combined a phone, an iPod, and an internet communicator in one. It was a revolution. Today, billions of people use smartphones inspired by that moment. In 2003, Steve learned he had a rare form of pancreatic cancer. He tried special diets and treatments hoping to fight it naturally. For years, he kept working while battling illness. In 2011, his health declined rapidly. On October 5th, 2011, Steve Jobs passed away at home, surrounded by family. He was 56 years old. He was buried in a quiet cemetery in Palo Alto, California. Steve Jobs' story is a lesson in possibility. He started life as an unwanted child. He failed and was fired. He made mistakes and hurt people, but he also dreamed big. He built things no one imagined. He showed the world that passion and belief can create miracles. In his own words, "The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do." May his story remind you that no matter where you begin, no matter how many times you fall, you can rise again, you can build something that lasts, and you can inspire the world.